You guys are Gen Z. How do I maintain that trust factor? They don't need speeches. They don't need expressions through words.
Change is happening so fast, so CEOs have no choice but to change.
Vibe नहीं match हो रही है.
How many of you feel that this is a phone? Do you think it's a torch? It is a torch because I can use it, right? Do you think it's a calculator? Do you think this is where I can access my social media? Do you think it's a computer? Answer is yes. So it is not a mobile phone alone. Okay, so we are going to start our panel discussion. As I said, that only in this era, only one business will not survive. For instance, I remember having a Nokia phone, but Nokia phone was only a Nokia phone and they couldn't get into smartphone business. I'm not here to sell cell phones here, but I thought this is a very useful experience. When we got into smartphones, what has happened? They added app stores where we can have access to software applications. And there are multiple things that happened. That's how the market of smartphone began. So similarly, any industry today will not be able to survive on its own. We need to have an ecosystem. Look at Zomato. They don't prepare food, but they have a chain of logistics. So on and so forth. So I can go on and on, but today is not the day where I am supposed to speak. My panel is supposed to speak. So let me ask the first question to Mukhvinder ji. So if you look at ecosystem thinking as I spoke, and how is it very different than conventional thinking? All these years we have been doing business, right? So do you think that ecosystem thinking or ecosystem industry will help? What are your initial thoughts? And then we can go around the table.
You know, what's happening is as a larger industry and as far as the overall system is concerned, there are far too many things happening, and that's how I am understanding the question. And therefore, please tell me if that's what it really means. Because there is far too much of happening, and therefore it's a combination of things that are happening internally within the firm, and which are also happening across the larger ecosystem in the world. So how do you go back and bring some of those pieces together? In today's world, it is becoming extremely challenging for you to work in a silo or just looking at what you do and what you are doing and not worry about what's happening. You know, every day, and especially, and you know, no conversation is complete unless and until we don't bring in the whole AI piece into the conversation, unless and until we don't bring in some of the large organizations that are kind of working on the LLM models and kind of bringing in new. Unless you don't bring all of those pieces together, unless and until you don't bring in what is happening in that world, and therefore look at organization from internally, you will not be able to succeed, because there is somebody or the other at some point of time is constantly looking at what's happening across the world or what's happening in the larger ecosystem. What are some of the partnerships that are getting developed? You know, some of our traditional partners that were there are also moving very, very quickly onto this AI bandwagon. Unless we don't get some of those pieces right, you will get left behind. You will be left out of the race, and I think that is going to be extremely challenging for any set of organization at this point of time. Now, those ecosystems, whether those are, and in an organization like ours, we work very closely with partners like SAP and Oracle and some of those, and I'm calling them as the ecosystem partners that are there, which is true for some of us who are part of technology organizations would see that. Now, they themselves are trying to ride the whole AI bandwagon. So you not only have to look at some pure play AI organizations, but also look at some of your larger ecosystems on what's happening, and then bring them around in the thinking. And therefore, I think that is what would be required. That would be what is important for you to succeed in tomorrow's world. And similarly, as far as students are concerned, they need to understand what's happening across in the ecosystem and not just look at from one perspective.
So great explanation. And just a follow-up question. Do you think in this market, see, we've been doing all these days, from what I heard from you, Mukhvinder ji, is ecosystem is going to helpful. Do you think it's a necessity, or you feel that this is just another frill that we're talking about?
This is absolutely critical. I mean, it's absolutely critical to look around in the world and figure out what's happening. And I was in one of the master classes that we were in earlier, and we were talking about this. I think it's important for students across the board to kind of go back and see what's happening in the world. I mean, just for you to say, I can look at what I'm learning in silos and not worry about what's happening around, it'll be extremely challenging for you as you move forward. I mean, in the one of the classrooms that we were in, and I asked, how many of you understand what's happening in the technology world? Unfortunately, we didn't hear too many hands kind of get. They all know what's happening, what is ChatGPT, and therefore they're going in there and finding answers to some of the questions that they have. But do they understand what's happening in the larger AI world? Employees, employers, I think we will get left behind. So I think it's important for us to kind of look around all over.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to this, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's a very prevalent topic in today's days and age, right? What is ecosystem? I think the prime example is if you look at, there are 6 companies in the world who are creating an AI ecosystem, right? Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, AMD, and OpenAI. They are customer to each other, they are supplier to each other, they are partners to each other, which was not the case earlier, right? Earlier you used to distinguish saying, here is my customer, here is my supplier, but these days those lines are blurred. So OpenAI is a customer to somebody and OpenAI is also supplier to somebody. And that is what ecosystem is all about in today's days and age, right? If you look at it, why does India need to do this AI summit? We are the first global South company to do an AI summit at this scale because we as a country need to create that ecosystem to take advantage of demographic dividend, to take advantage of our tech talent which we have, to take advantage of all the young workforce we have. And unless we create the ecosystem to pivot from service-led economy to IP-led economy, why we were not able to build any of our Googles, Facebooks, and Microsoft of the world? Because mentally, and if you look at our legacy, we are wired to be a service-based organization. We are great at servicing something. We are able to do same thing repeatedly at a massive scale, and that is what has been driving our country till now. But with this new technology, unless we pivot this to an IP based where we make our own, maybe may not make large LLMs, but small LLMs, something which solves this country's use case, we'll not be able to leapfrog the next orbit of the growth cycle for our country, right? And that is why you need to create that ecosystem. That is why you need to bring these international players. That is why government is taking, lot of steps to able to create that ecosystem, right? So that we can become that IP-based economy and not confined to be only services-based economy. And it is important for us to understand this because few years back, lines were clearly drawn to say this is a technology company, this is a services company, this is IT, this is pharma. Those lines are getting blurred as we speak. No matter which industry you are in, no matter who's your customer, all of us need to be in the ecosystem where we should leverage the technology to be able to pivot our business models. Because if you don't do that, then all of us have seen the examples of codecs of the world. I think somebody was speaking some time back about Sony's example, right? So you need to be in this constant paranoia to see that because we don't know who's building what at what corner of the world, which will disrupt your business, which will disrupt your business model. And therefore, you need to understand to say that, how can I be part of this ecosystem to understand what are the headwinds I will face as a business or as a company or as an institution? And then you need to proactively build on that. And same is the case for an individual, for a professional, for a student. If you do not know that what is coming your way and you're still living in your cocoon, I think all of us are making mistakes. So we need to be very, very clear and always be on our toes and not on our heels to understand that there is a perfect storm brewing outside. And I think it is an opportunity. It is also a little scary, but I think this is the technology first time ever in the humankind which despairs you and which gives you a lot of hope, because it has unlimited potential, but it has unlimited potential on the both sides. It can create a lot of good, but it can also create a lot of bad. So you need to build those guardrails, but you need to know how do you want to leverage and move forward. So that is why I think, in my limited opinion, ecosystem is very important. And all of us need to understand in our individual sphere, in our organization sphere, and in our institutional sphere to say, what is the ecosystem I want to build to have my next orbit of growth?
So great point. Just one follow-up question here. And today, everything that we talk about, it gets suffixed as AI or prefixed as AI. Do you feel this, usage of AI as a backbone, which is a big part of ecosystem, is it really going to accelerate industries, or you feel that this is very fragile, this is a buzzword, everything will come down? If you want to talk about it, and if you give some one or two examples, it will help, especially on AI based organizations.
See, I think the technology is for real. There's no doubt about it. All of us can question to say that all the $1 trillion and the numbers which are throwing around, are they real or not? That is to be seen. There are a lot of experts in the world who are betting against it, that some of it is bubble and it will burst at some time. But I think technology has proven itself. And as we go along, it will also commoditize, right? Everybody can leverage, everybody can use. Therefore, the question is, what is going to be your moat? How will you differentiate yourself if everybody has the same technology? Everybody has equal number of, everybody's machine has same intelligence and same knowledge. So what is the differentiator? I think in my view, the differentiator is going to be your ability to ask right questions, because answers are instant. No matter what question you have, you'll get the answers in seconds. So you need to know what is the question you need to ask. And unless you have that ability to critically think and ask the right questions, and to ask the right questions, you need to have a worldview. You can't be saying that if you don't know history, if you don't know philosophy, if you cannot think about, like in Hindi we say darshan shastra, if you don't know life ka darshan, you'll not have the right mental ability to ask the right question. So I think those humanity skills is where you need to really focus on. And in our masterclass, me and sir were emphasizing to students to say that, keep honing those basic values, and especially in India, we teach those values at home, right? Be honest, have the tenacity, respect your elders, because these are easier said than done. And you'll always have that dilemma to say, where do I draw the line on ethics? Is this right thing to do or wrong thing to do? And those are the judgment calls you need to take. And those machines won't take it, because they will take in binary still. They might have some context, but as a human, you need to keep applying those human values and hone your skills to have critical thinking and ask the right questions. And I think that, in my view, is going to be the biggest differentiator.
When the business format change, when you look back for army of people to support. Okay. So the way we had been looking at business, earlier we were saying that I will run an industry and it will flourish. But then today I realize, because of the ecosystem thinking, I need to have 5 other sectors who should support me. This means I have to open up my mind. It's a different way of thinking. Okay. It's more than technology. Now my question to you, Sasi, is, given your experience, what do you think about talent? What are the new talent capabilities we should look at? Because at the end of the day, we need to build an organization around it. So any thoughts about talent we can get, newer talent capabilities we should look at?
Perfect. Great question. Hey, by the way, I really loved the way you opened with the Apple, the ecosystem and everything. It chased me. I was just thinking about that. So yes, my fellow panelists have given a very beautiful definition of ecosystem and how it's evolving. You're asking from a talent standpoint, what are the implications? So here it is. The ecosystem thinking actually changes the way we have learned about how traditional business setups have been. They own the resources, they control the outcomes. It is we versus others as competitors. That is a traditional way of thinking. The ecosystem challenges that to say, how can I move from control and ownership into influence and leading to outcomes? And instead of theory, let me give you a real example of my own organization. I come from this IT product company called Pega Systems, right? Now, Pega Systems in India are 2,000 people, but our certification and our implementation partners, our other colleagues who are certified on Pega Tech, there are 34,000 of them in India right now. You know how we do that? It is through ecosystem thinking. We said, if Pega Tech has to be adopted, we can't hire 10 people for every client we do and then have that arithmetic progression when we advance in business. So what we said was, let's look at the key players. You have your clients who consume the technology. You have your partners who help deliver the tech, need not be always us. We control the actual nuances of the tech. We need a machine to spin more talent in the market, to your question, who are certified on Pega. So along came this model 10 years ago, where we said, we went to the universities and said, listen, as part of your BTech or BE curriculum, start teaching Pega. We are going to supply the experts, the course materials, zero cost to you, and we are going to ensure that if 100 people pass out of it with Pega, 95 of them at least will get placements because the tech was always in demand. Then we went to the ecosystem partners with whom we collaborate, and then we said, for you to hire, where will you get people from? You're spending cost a lot of money to train people, right? If ecosystem is to offer you ready-made talent for you to purchase, deploy, and then engage, would you consume? They said more than happy to. Then would you pick up the partial cost of training? Then we needed somebody who would actually go to universities, train them, spend 300 plus hours in terms of hands-on experience to the students. Those are our vendors like Talent Sprint, Authbridge, and some of the others. Now, 10 years later, with more than 17,000 graduates across 25 different colleges in India and another 14 in APAC region, Pega ecosystem has grown so much that we now have students who will actually pay if they are interested in Pega course as part of their overall fees. Colleges will supply the infrastructure, the facilities, get the students on board with no other additional cost. We have 4 vendors dealing with the east, west, north, south of India who actually deliver trainings, bring the faculty, and then maintain the roster. Now, what Pega does is actually to focus on our core competency, which is tech. When we had calls from a client in New Zealand saying that we need 30 developers in the next 2 days or 5 days, we are not going to get, looking into our hiring order board anymore. We are going to tap into our partners and say, key project, would you like to take? There is a revenue share. So the ecosystems come together to actually fulfill an order. Now, this is all in the business. If you have to think as a student today, what does this thinking mean for you in your role? Think of it. Develop relation with other college goers who are pursuing similar courses in other institutes. Think of what are they attending, what conferences, what network they are building. Connect with industry leaders in groups of students. One for all for one. That kind of thinking actually puts little effort from everybody, but massive gains from everybody back. That in a nutshell is how I see ecosystem in action, to your point, and how talent really flows from there on.
This means we have got a lot of work to do in terms of building talent capability. Ashish, you want to add anything? You have seen talent changing the shape, etc. Your general take on how talent has been changing its shape, capability in last couple of years. Any thoughts on that?
Okay, so Sanjeev, thank you. Topic is beyond corporate, right?
Absolutely.
And I can relate to the analogy. If I understand, it's more to do with the culture. And how does culture work in the companies? Your culture, my culture, and actual culture. But it's also upon beyond. Manager culture, boss culture, CEO culture, then corridor culture, then the blue collar culture, white collar culture. Within the ecosystem, somebody need to understand who influence what, And if you know the pulse, of, let's say, market, if you know the pulse of whatever you are part of it, I think, then you are not going to believe in the ecosystem. You just know one person. If you are able to make that person happy, if you are able to make that person, happy and do something whatever that person is looking for. It may be selfish even. We can call it selfish nature, but end of the day, you are working for a company. Yeah. And talent management, how does it work? It's all perception. On the reality, it's perception. We have seen many people who know better than XYZ, but they are not being promoted. Their salary is very low. And there are some people who are not good, but just because of the ecosystem of the company, like ecosystem says, make everybody in CC. If I'm the boss, ensure you make me CC. Let's take it offline. Yeah, we'll discuss later. And during the promotion, fine. मैंने तेरे लिए बड़ा सोचा है. So there are a lot of if and buts. But if you want to survive in the corporate, obviously understand the ecosystem and who are the top 1, 2, 3 people. And their weakness one need to understand.
Thank you, Ashish. Now, Ajay, you're on the hot seat. We spoke ecosystem 20,000 times in last 15 minutes, right? So if you really want to make it simple, basically, you are opening your organization. All the decisions are not driven by only your internal governance. Other people are also going to play a role there. It is like globalization, right? When you open the country to the entire world, you'll have to let go some rights, right? You have to trust it works, right? Now, give us some point of view in terms of what is your take on, you don't want to let go control. See, you are in a dilemma. I need to open my organization to others. I need to take help of others, but I should not let go the controls. How do we deal with this situation? On any thoughts on that?
The question is very much interesting, but you guys are Gen Zs and very much favorite to me, so I'll keep it relevant to you. We are opening up our organizations, maybe nationally or globally. How do I maintain that trust factor within the new generation? Yeah. Sir, first of all, their definition of trust has changed and they've started coming up with terms like vibe nahi match ho rahi hai. Yeah. So I don't know what that vibe is for millennials or Gen X or Y, but what I understand is it's not nothing greater than trust, but they don't need speeches. They don't need expressions through words. They want flexibility. They want to be trusted for the task that has been given and assigned to the young talent. They want to be accountable. At the same time, they want to be heard. So I think when we as an organization try to decode the new generation, they automatically start trusting. In bits and pieces, we have heard in India specifically that Gen Z is volatile, Gen Z does not understand. But I have difference of opinion. I think generations to generations, everything's had changed. I had just spoken in the masterclass also that we heard from our parents the stories of studying in the street lights during night and then fathers climbing the mountains to go to school. And that time I always used to figure it out, why not study in daytime, in sunlight? So generations are changing now, and so our trust statements to Gen Zs is also outdated. So they don't want to hear out this statement. They want to hear is, are you giving me that accountability? Are you hearing our ideas? So I think once we give that, trust automatically gets built up.
Yeah, and a follow-up question. So it's great to think philosophically, but we all are from HR background. So what do you feel should be role of HR in this entire ecosystem thinking? We spoke about talent, exposing ourselves to various threats in the market, etc. What do you think that role HR can play? You can start and others can also add to that.
Sure. So historically, HR has always been a central foundational arm of the organization. And I would start with a very hot topic these days that's running, and that is when things don't get right in the ecosystem, whom to blame? Yeah, so there's always this blame game, and I don't want to name any current incident, but RoboDog is what the incident I would want to highlight right now. Life is not that easy in organizations where people would just come and say, hey, that's because of me. Yeah, that's just one incident, but Arshia had made a valid point in the earlier panel discussion that if this event is successful, everybody is responsible for it. Likewise, if there is a breakdown, if there is any concern or issue, the blame cannot be done only on one spot. It is actually contribution. It is aggregated concern that everyone has to acknowledge it. So role of HR is to actually monitor, figure it out, deep dive, be neutral, not be favored or biased to anybody, any team, do a SWOT analysis and conclude that what is the solution. Because as a people and organization team, we cannot play blame game. Rather, we focus on solutioning part, because for us, all stakeholders are same. And we also are one of the stakeholders for the company. So that's it from my end, sir.
Thank you. Now this goes to Arpita. So thank you. It's a great answer. Arpita, given your experience in HR and talent, so we are always again having those dilemmas, whether individual contribution should be recognized or team contribution should be recognized. But this is the third thing in your dilemma now, which is not only within the organization, but you are saying you are exposing yourself to the external world. How you deal with external worlds? Now, external world doesn't mean only vendors, right? It could be your logistic providers. How you deal with that? So do you think that this has added newer complication in appraising and assessing people, talent? What is your take on this?
So, for a long time, what we realized was for a business to survive, sustain, it is important that you concentrate on your core job and let all the other jobs get outsourced. That's what we have all heard, right? And that's your ecosystem where, if you are a quick commerce company, logistics goes to somebody else. Obviously, your, vendors and all of that come into play. But then Amazon changed the entire thing. They said that the speed at which we want the deliveries to happen is so much more than what a traditional logistic company can offer, that I have to do it myself. Probably I'll be able to do it better. I think same thing with the ecosystem now. While it is very important that you keep focus on what you're doing and, do not move away from that focus, and AWS or, the logistic systems and, a Blinkit today for that matter wouldn't have happened if, only Blue Dart was the company doing the courier service for us, right? So similarly for students, it's the same thing. When you join a job, and this is again something that I was talking about in the, masterclass that we had. In India, relationship is very, very important. You may want to write 5 mails and tell your manager that I've written to this person and this person is supposed to come back to me, and this person has not come back to me, hence I have not done the job. Your work is to deliver the job, which means you have to build the relationship with the person from whom you are asking for something to be able to deliver. So that is on you. And that's where the whole time and effort that you put into those relationships start mattering so much. So going back to Sanjeev's, the first thing that he said, ecosystem, right? What does ecosystem mean? It means for a human being to survive, all the other things, all the other environmental factors, including, the microscopic living things to a large animal, all of it is important. Similarly, for somebody who's joining a job, only your supervisor is not important. There are 5 probably in the beginning, the span is lesser and it becomes more and more, but those 5 people around you are equally important. They are your ecosystem. If they don't supply you with information on time, or if they are demanding something and if there is any delay and you're not being able to explain it, all of that make or break your, work and your effort there. So it's very important that you understand the basic of that ecosystem and then take it forward into an organizational level.
Thank you, Arpita. Very valuable insights. Now let me go to Mukhvinder ji. So we spoke a lot about various things. We spoke about talent. We spoke about AI. We spoke about threats. So if you want CEO to change his or her mindset, what do you think that CEO should be changing? The way we look at a business nowadays.
I think the CEOs are already have changed their mindset. I mean, they moved away from the old mindset. Because the change is happening so fast, so CEOs have no choice but to change. I mean, in case if they stay with the older mindset, then somebody at the board is not doing their job that they're supposed to do. So that's one part of it. I think what they need to do is, and which is true for not just for CEO but for all others also, is be ready for change that is already happening. I heard this, somebody mentioned this. You're almost on a plane which is taking off, but you realize that there's one tire which is punctured and you need to change that at the same time as the plane is taking off. I mean, it's situation is as critical as that one. I mean, you just can't be able to, any organization or any institution or anybody, actually individuals also, if they're not seeing the change happening around us, if they're not adapting to that particular change, if they're not aware of what that means for them as individuals and for the organization, then there is a much bigger problem that we have. But ready for change, ability to change, be far more ready to absorb what's happening in the larger ecosystem around the world and kind of be tuned in. I think that would be the biggest ask anybody should have from anybody whom they're working with, interacting with, partnering.
Thank you, Mukhvinder ji. Now this goes to Sasi. So anyways, today if you look at organizational culture or if you look at economy, it's uncertain, right? There is some build-up uncertainty already there. People feel that AI has brought newer element. They're already feeling uncertain. Or do you feel that if our dependence on other alliance infrastructure, if it goes up, do you feel that our internal talent will feel very jittery? They will feel uncertain. Do you think that there will be impact on our talent?
Okay, that's an interesting topic. You see, for ecosystem to work, you have to move from a control mindset to an enablement mindset. Okay? And at the root of that is trust. In my experience, last 5-6 years, where we have seen those contracts, those ecosystem alliances, as well as success stories, trust goes way more than actually what's written in the contract. And that comes from being transparent, right? So it's one of the values in which, several organizations live by, especially where I have seen. The more you're transparent with what is our outcome versus where do we focus versus where do we partner and enable others, the less angst there'll be inside the organization. So I feel it starts with transparency, elevates into trust, and then what comes out of it naturally is enablement and success. So that would be my view.
Okay, thanks so much. So now we already spoke about, Vikas, this is to you. You spoke a lot about AI, and thanks for that. As you know that AI again is going to expose ourselves to a lot of things or threats. So what kind of guardrails that we should build around our system so that while we get dividend from ecosystem thinking, at the same time, we do not increase organizational threat? What are a couple of things that come to your mind?
See, I think the threat is for real, okay? Because you're building a technology, and by some prediction, by Turing's law, if you apply on AI technology, at some point it will become more intelligent than us. And what we need to guard against is that it should not become a master. Humans should still remain the master of technology. Simple example, right? Usain Bolt needs to train for many years to run that 100 meter in 9 seconds, right? If you build a robo, put an AI and say that you need to be optimized for speed and you need to run this 100 meter in the fastest possible way, what it will do? And it's an actual experiment, right? So robo runs a couple of times and then it realizes that faster way to reach from here to there is sliding, not running. It can slide, right? If you're fighting with a robo and you're doing whatever, kung fu, karate, whatever, it can tear its leg off and hit you because he wants to win, right? As a human, you have that limitation. I will not tear my leg off, right? Even if I want to win, because there'll be blood, there'll be pain and whatnot. Human and machine, robo and machine don't feel that. Those are the guardrails you need to build to say where to stop. You want to optimize for efficiency, you want to optimize for end result, but there has to be guardrail. And then guardrail, first you as a human need to think, and then you need to build into your algorithm so that machine don't behave like that. Because if you don't build those guardrails, they will behave like that. Because they'll be optimized for outcome, they'll be optimized for productivity, and they'll be optimized for speed. So I think, and that is why, one of the biggest investment and one of the new sectors which will come across very prominently is the cybersecurity. Because building these agents who are self-serving autonomous agent, you need to also build those guardrails to say that when you're allowing that agency to agent, how do you guardrails that it is not taking certain decisions which is undermining your own interest, right? So and there are companies, Palo Alto, for example, have already made a lot of acquisitions from Israel, who are the world's hub of cybersecurity. They're building some of the smartest technology because it will need a lot of data. All of us, our data is going to be on these platforms. So somebody has to build that guardrails and ecosystem to protect our interest.
If this is successful, and we see successes everywhere, no problems. We are all there to celebrate successes. So the question to you is, and others can add to this, what happens if this fails? Who should own up this failure? Any thoughts around it?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and I think we as system definitely fail multiple times, and I will give my example from my organization, my earlier organization, Tata Consultancy. So in TCS, when one of the projects was not functioning better, till the time it was functioning smoothly, there was absolutely no feedback. But when the project started performing poor, it first started stating that candidates are not skilled. These were the complaints that most of the HRs usually get it from business. Then question comes to the HR, who hired them? Then this HR goes to the colleges, what do you teach them? Then colleges show us the curriculum that we teach them, but we can't because we are not autonomous. Not all colleges are autonomous. So we have to imbibe what is there by NIRF and AICT. Then they go back to them. So this is a vicious cycle which continuously goes on and on. But that time we had done this identity crisis and we realized each one of us was responsible at one stage because we did not have a long-term vision for a feedback mechanism. If we could have collated much in advance to business that what do you see the futuristic skills, we could have given a feedback to campuses for electives, addition of electives for new skills, they would have happily done that, executed. So now we are doing it in TCS. We have a separate program. In Siemens also I'm implementing it. But I think when there is a problem, nobody accepts the blame and it just keeps on going it. It's only when we introspect, we realize each one had contributed its percentage of not giving the right feedback and long-term vision. So that's my say on that, sir.
Thank you so much. And ma'am, Arpita ma'am, it comes back to you again. Possibly the last question for the discussion at individual level. You have tons of experience in hiring talent, developing them, changing them to suit your organization, and you have got several success stories. So based on whatever you have heard so far, what do you think that one would do differently when it comes to talent development, especially when you're hiring stage?
I think I'll take it from everybody and whatever they have spoken. I think the agility of learning is very important. And I won't say that it's important only at the starting stage. Like I was telling somebody, I have 50 different AI apps downloaded on my phone because I want to keep on experimenting and learning. Because I'm also equally scared about my job, my relevance in the organization. And relevance means, will I be useful to the organization in the next 5 years? So I think for all of us and definitely for the institutes, because you're growing people, right? You're building the foundation for them. It is very important that you keep on having courses that are relevant to the industry. But same way, the faculty also needs to improve. The faculty also needs to learn. I think in a lot of universities, when we speak about what is required, we don't talk about faculty development programs. If you don't do that, then the foundation is not there. You can't just slap on another course, bring in somebody from outside, and then teach another course as a parallel thing. Especially things like AI has to be integrated, has to be something where even somebody who's teaching marketing should be able to refer to AI on how to utilize it. The engineering guys also need to refer to it on how to utilize it. I think that's where probably India still has a gap. Good thing is there is a lot of industry and academia interactions that are happening. We can keep you updated, but I think overall you can also remain updated. And if the theory is, and especially when this kind of forum where all the leaders of the world come and look at India as the ground where the next generation of AI based talents are going to come in, if we do not work on this ground level and improve the curriculums we have, improve the faculty already knows how to teach, why not train them on how to teach this? Is the part I think where we really need to work. If that's done, if the learning agility in faculty is developed, a lot of our problems might get solved.
So thank you, Arpita, and thank you the entire panel. Let me summarize for the sake of the completeness. We spoke about CEO mindset when it comes to this thinking, ecosystem thinking. Then we made good points around AI. How do you build guardrails around it? How do you limit the exposure in terms of risk to the ecosystem? Then we spoke about not letting go your controls, but still maintain still get the benefits of the ecosystem thinking. Then we spoke a lot about talent, different talent that is needed. How do we hire them? How do we handle uncertainty that is there in their mind? So it was a great discussion, Ashish and everyone. So thank you so much for your valuable insights. And on behalf of everyone, as a moderator, let me thank each one of you for their time. Let's give them a big round of applause.
On behalf of the organizing team, I sincerely thank our distinguished panelists for their valuable insights and thoughtful perspectives. Our appreciation to the moderator for expertly guiding the discussion and to the audience for their gracious presence and engagement. Thanks again.